We have one remaining with the individual, and he's not going to let her leave the aircraft at this time.
He made me feel very sure that we had a very real and horrifying threat.
We don't know who he was, where he came from, or where he went.
Hello, folks. Good evening. How are you? I am here with my guy, Mr. Bruce Smith, the best of the best, the godfather of the Vortex, the mayor of Cooperville, and basically everyone loves Bruce. So I decided to invite Bruce tonight and just to hang out a little bit. I know everybody's got questions, and we are going to start. So, Bruce, how are you this evening?
Beautiful.
Great.
Everybody's lovely. Yep. Good.
Great. All right. So we'll just jump right in. Basically, this is of course, we're going to jump in with this question. It is for Bruce. What is Bruce's Tina Bar theory?
My Tina Bar theory?
What is your Tina Bar theory?
Well, I beg, borrow, and steal heavily from Eric. Eric is many things to the Vortex and many things to the case. And one of the things that he does provide that I consider of great value, he has great analytical skills and he has great imaginative skills. And his theory is multifaceted. So the first aspect is that the plane was flying over Tina Bar or close to Tina Bar when Cooper jumped. And things kind of line up that the plane was somewhere on that latitude that would be comparable to Tina Bar. Now, where along that latitude? Was it over Tina Bar? Was it over the battleground, the city of Battleground, Washington? Or was it a little bit to the east? Or, you can argue about that. But it's pretty well established that around 813, 814, pick a number, whatever, it's in that latitude-ishness, all right? So it's reasonable to speculate from there that Cooper jumped close to Tina Bar and landed close to Tina Bar and most likely saw the river as he's coming down and said, when he got on the ground, the river's going to have some sand. That's going to be a good place to bury things because everything around here is all blackberry bushes and, salal and undergrowth. And it's a mess. Who wants to dig in that? So, because he's got to bury a parachute and the money and the bomb and what else, whatever. So gets his way to Tina Bar, buries everything in some big holes. And that's in November. The night of, and then in the spring or summer, there's flooding, and he goes, "Oh, my money could wash away. I better go get it," and starts retrieving it with a flashlight or whatever in the middle of the night, and leaves a couple bundles behind without realizing, because it's dark and he's in a rush or whatever, and that's how the money got there. And erosion was fairly constant over the next 8 years so he may have buried it a couple feet down, but that feet's worth of sand just kept getting less and less and less to the time that Brian Ingram showed up. It was, an inch or two. So Brian found it, which would explain why the bills only have summertime diatoms on them. So they only got exposed. So the bills only got exposed to river water in the summertime.
Gotcha.
So
okay. So
that all comes from Eric. Pretty much every word of that. But
okay.
It's my exposition on his perspectives. But I think it's the most reasonable and most supported speculation on Tina Bar that I've heard presented by anybody. So
I mean, it's all again, it's if all is fair in love and war, then all is fair in Tina Bar theories. They're all,
of course,
they're all equal because it's all who the hell knows.
Now Bob Edwards was here, with all of his maps and his algorithms and his computations and all of that. He puts the money down upstream.
Yeah,
by PDX or whatever. It's like, how can you argue with that? But Eric's perspective, his speculations, they kind of satisfy me. They land more gently on my soul than anything else. So.
Well, they don't land. They land like a ton of bricks on my head. So they don't land so gently on me. Yeah, we're different in that way. So
I've lost more hair than you, so you know.
I'm catching up, Bruce. Look at that.
You are. You're not far behind, dude.
No, I'm not. Speaking of Eric, I could borrow some of his hair. He's got a nice head of hair for a man of his age. Let me give some shout outs. Hello to Cypher. Hello to Pepperoni. Hello to Jude Morrow in the UK. Also to
Jude. What's he up? What are you up to, Jude?
That's right. He's hanging around. Hello to BBG in Cornwall. And let's see, Packer Jack's in the house, and Nikki Broughton's in the house, and Aunt Lisa Cesari's in the house. And
wait, let's go back. That BBG in Cornwall, is that your girlfriend?
Perhaps, maybe.
Oh, I see.
Could be. I don't know.
You're going to be coy on that. All right.
All right. So,
excuse me.
Yes, pardon. Let's see.
Please forgive.
See, who else? We have Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim, who I chastised for his, what was it? Your bad red beans and rice, Uncle Jim, the other day. Okay, so here's the okay, back to questions. What about the dredging that took place on Tina Bar? So the dredging, we can discuss that. I can explain that. The dredge that was used in 74, the only dredging that was used post hijacking was in 74. And that was basically the dredge that they used had like I don't know how to explain it. Basically, dredges are two things. Dredges can suck up stuff and spit it out, or they can have like a big claw and grab it and move it. And this was the one that sucks and spits out, basically. And it pulverizes everything. And there's actually a 302 where after Tina Bar, where they went and interviewed some of the Corps of Engineers guys who did the dredge. And they said, absolutely no way that would survive a dredge. Like it would have been torn to complete asunder. And certainly those bundles would not have stayed together like that if it had been shot out of a dredge. So there's that. But let's see. So yeah, the dredge theory is that's not viable.
What I'm assuming is the dredge theory it's the theory that the money somehow was on the bottom of the river and got sucked up in the dredging process and got tossed up onto the
that's the idea that he no pulls in the river. I mean, listen, the problem with Cooper no pulling into the river is that, look, that river is only a half mile wide where the plane crossed it. And, that's only going to be, that plane's going 3 miles a minute. So half a mile is 10 seconds, I guess. So there was only 10 seconds when that plane was even over the river. And the odds of it's just astronomical. The odds of him no pulling are really high, are really astronomical almost. The odds of a parachute failure are also 1,000,000 to 1. Then he has to, that's a real bullseye to land in the river. And also, why is he jumping? See, that's where I differ with everything about the river, Bruce, is like, look, we know from the copycats that they could see city lights and things like that from their vantage point. And as anybody who's in an airplane you can see city lights. I have a really hard time with Cooper thinking I'm just going to jump basically over Portland. That would be that's just hard to fathom. I mean, any guy jumping for he wanted to get away. So why is he going to jump over when he knows that there's a river down there? I just don't see it. So yeah, I don't think he jumped that close to. I mean, I think where he jumped, Orchards-ish, makes the most sense because we've got you're not too far from civilization, but you're not in the wilderness either. You're kind of in that Goldilocks zone of I'm not going to land on a cop car, but I'm not going to land 5 miles into the woods up a tree. So, and Bruce, that's one of the things that I wanted to change on. It's actually one of the impetuses for me writing my book was the Wikipedia argument that I got in for those people, because I wanted to add that modern, even the FBI, Larry clarified that. He said, yeah, the FBI, we in 2007 believed that Cooper's drop zone is orchards or Hockinson, that area.
Yeah. Does he ever say why?
Yeah, it's because it's the same thing that that most of us in the Vortex, I guess, who believe that it's the conflation between, because for those who really don't know, is that they reported that Cooper was, the oscillations was not the pressure bump. Okay, oscillations was Cooper walking down the stairs. They were feeling it on their cabin, or they saw it. They didn't feel it. They saw it on their cabin rate of climb indicator, and they called to report it. Radicek says, we're getting some, after his headpiece popped out, because he turned his head to look at the cabin rate of climb indicator, and his headpiece pops out. So in the transcript, he goes, excuse me, my earpiece popped out. He goes, we're getting some oscillations in the cabin rate of climb indicator. We think he must be doing something with the stairs. That's at 8:11. Okay, so now we've talked to Radicek and Anderson have since said that the oscillations happen, and then they talked about it for a few minutes between themselves, going, what's going on back there, yada, yada. And then the pressure bump happened a few minutes later. Okay. So, but the problem at the time, for some reason, the FBI, well, not the FBI, Soderlund, who is a genius, really, an aviation genius, he's in the Aviation Hall of Fame. Soderlund conflated the oscillations at 8:11 with the pressure bump. He, for whatever reason, he thought they were the same thing. And the FBI believed it too, because of what Soderlund said. So throughout the FBI files, you'll see where they say the oscillations, comma, or pressure bump, comma, were at 8:11. So they clearly conflated those two things when there's actually a 3-minute gap in between there, or 3 or 4 minutes, who knows how long. But Larry found that, and Larry goes, wait a second, these are different things. The pressure bump and oscillations.
Right, so Larry just added on the 3 minutes, speculating that the oscillations, the plane was probably closer to Battleground, Washington.
Or, well, yeah, because if you looked at the map, 8:14, 8:15, you're going to be down by Battleground, but in between Battleground and Orchards, Brush Prairie. And that's what Larry said, that because talking to the pilots, they said, yeah, they can't remember, but they just said it was a few minutes. It wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time. So 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah. And that's how you come up with 8:14, essentially, which is what I think. When 8:13 puts him at Battleground, 8:14 puts him at Orchards, I think. 8:15 would put him in Vancouver. 8:16 puts him in the drink. So,
well, I wonder what John Detler and Bob Furman would say. And
I know what they would say.
What do they say? All right.
Well, Detler, when I explained this to him, he was pretty mad about it. He was like, "Are you serious?"
Mad? Ooh,
yeah.
You're putting his feet to the fire. Ooh.
Well, he was mad, not at me. He was mad that they didn't know that. He was like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah. Y'all were looking in the wrong. Every time y'all went and searched, when you yourself were out there getting trench foot in the wet with the Army, you were looking in the wrong spot." And I explained why, and explained to him that the FBI have updated it because of this and that. And he believed that it made sense to him. He goes, "Oh yeah." I mean, he was on the sled test, so he understands oscillations and pressure bumps and things. And okay. It's he was upset about it. He was just mad at the resources, because they did waste a lot of resources looking in the wrong spot, and they wasted a lot of leads. That's the problem too, is if they were asking people in Orchards, hey, because they went door to door, every business, every house up in that area, around area, right? In
the Amboy area, but not in Orchards.
That's right. And
or
so
Hockinson, my understanding is that the FBI's evolved perspective was the jump took place over Orchards, and he drifted northwest a couple of miles to Hockinson.
Correct.
And as far as I know, nobody's ever gone looking. And
no
one's knocking on any doors to this day.
No, and that was something that I kind of got upset about a little bit. I contacted Doug Perry about it. Because he'll write Cooper articles that aren't about bed sheets. He'll write Cooper articles that make sense to him. And I said, look, I think a lot of readers might want to know that the FBI changed the drop zone. And if you are from Orchards, because it's the Vancouver paper or the Portland paper he writes for, I said, if you live in Orchards or whatever, maybe you remember something. Maybe you've got a piece of something, or whatever. So maybe it would be.
Well, orchards is radically different now than it was in 71.
Oh yeah.
Back then it was agricultural. There were orchards. There were fruit orchards. All right. Now it's nothing but strip malls and Costco's and Fred Meyer's and.
Yeah, there's a picture right there. I just put up on the screen. That's a picture of orchards from the air in, I believe, September of 71.
There you go.
So,
yeah,
those are the two.
That's more built up than I thought it would be. I figured there'd be a lot more, trees.
Well, what it does show, though, is it shows that looks like a pretty nice place to land.
Yeah, it's pretty wide open. Yeah.
Pretty wide open, not a lot of trees. And we see those two arrows pointing
This is orchards, right? So this is okay. So this is he jumped over this and then drifted into Hockinson. And Hockinson pretty much looks very similar nowadays to how it did in 71, which is rolling dairy country, rolling hills. But there are some developments coming up, and there's some fairly steep terrain and ravines on the eastern side of the town. But it's pretty agricultural still, and very upper middle class.
Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. It's a wealthy. It's like a wealthy enclave.
Yeah, it is actually, because I remember when I was trying to see what orchards in Hockinson looked like, I YouTubed to see if there were any videos of it, and there were a few real estate videos of real estate agents driving around, and yeah, those are pretty posh, lower high class type. Lower upper class.
Yeah, it's not mansions, and I would even go so far as to say it's McMansions, but it's gated communities and upper middle class developments.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but the terrain though, I'm actually going to drive through there when I'm renting a car when I go out there this year. I'm going to drive down there and see myself, just because I've never been in that area. I've never been to Ariel just to see the old tavern or whatever. But yeah, so I wrote to Doug Perry, and the article he wrote barely mentioned it at all. And because I was like, maybe, you never know, maybe somebody remembered something, or maybe somebody has something that, I found this in my backyard 5 years ago and I threw it in the garage, whatever. You never know unless you ask, right?
Yeah, I went to it was either the principal of the middle school or the principal of the high school in Hockinson, and I gave him all my credentials and I gave him a copy of my book, and I said, look, if you ever want me to come down and talk to a school assembly or your history class, or any of your teachers, social studies, wanted me to come down, talk about the unknown history of Hockinson and how you're tied into, there's a target on this place, and it puts you front and center in one of the biggest unsolved crimes in the world. And I never heard back from these guys. So
shame.
And I never followed up. So it's going to take a little bit more juice. So
yeah, and I remember Georgia always had something about, wasn't it? No, it was Sluggo who mentioned that some rumor about the FBI digging around Brush Prairie, I think, maybe digging in a cemetery there or something. I don't recall that. I don't know if you remember that or not. I think that was Sluggo who had some theory about that.
Yeah. By the way, Ryan, I don't listen to your podcast with any frequency, but you're tossing terms out. Do your listeners know who Sluggo is?
Some of them do. But okay, Sluggo was basically a staple of the early internet vortex, I guess, right? Bruce, you talk about
Sluggo. At this point, I would call him the real godfather of the vortex. Yeah. And he could also be characterized as the ghost of the vortex.
Yes. Rip Sluggo, as Jude just said. So.
Rest in peace, Sluggo. Yeah. He really carried the water in the early days. He's the first one to establish a website that was authentic and factual and had a lot of details. Really followed the narrative and the perspectives of the FBI, which he never challenged the FBI, which is one thing I did. And so a lot of what Sluggo was saying was either incorrect or misleading because he was misled and fed misinformation. So, but it's well documented. So, so there was a solidity to Sluggo. And when Larry Carr started posting publicly in the chat room in that drop zone chat room, Sluggo was one of the main guys that was talking to him. So it was Larry, Sluggo, this fellow Georgia, who's, I don't know if he's ever around anymore, but he's in my books because Georgia was, busting my kachukas all the time, but with substance and real questions and had information. And I wish he was more of a presence because he has historical information because he has family in the FBI, and he has family that lived in Vancouver, and there are stories in his own family talking about seeing the plane fly over and seeing something flaming coming out at about 8:15 that night, and it was flying underneath the clouds. And Sluggo, that's the last round of conversations I had with him, because he wanted me to do more work here in Washington State to find out what his family was doing, And it's like, hey, no, dude, it's your family. You come here to Washington.
We lost Bruce there for a second. See if he'll come back. There you are. We lost you for a second.
Okay, I never left my screen. I kept hearing myself and kept seeing myself. So I just
Sluggo, but his his real name, was it Wayne?
Warren.
Who was
Jerry? His first name is Jerry.
No, Jerry Warren.
Jerry Warner.
No, Warner is Georgia.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
We're talking about Georgia, not Sluggo. Okay, Georgia. Yeah.
Georgia's around. Wayne
Walker, maybe. Wayne
Wallace, something like that.
Wayne Walker, maybe.
Yeah.
I forget his name. Yeah, that's Sluggo. Yeah, but Wayne Walker, that was his name. So, Sluggo's website was the inspiration for my Norjack website, because, I said there needs to be a place where you can have all the 302s and all the rigmarole. Tim Wallace, also from England, asks, how much was Snowman involved in Petey's book? Do you know about that?
In Heaney's book?
Petey's book, Peterson. How much was Snowman involved in Sheridan Peterson's book?
Snowman was active in editing Sheridan Peterson's book, The Frightful Laugh of the Idiot, or something, whatever that is. Yeah, all right. And made it readable. Beforehand, it was uneven. There were passages that worked fine, and there were some that really grated on the ears. And Snowman smoothed out the rough spots, and did so in such a fashion that Sheridan accepted them and welcomed them. He may have died cursing Snowman.
He did,
but that's Petey. That's Sheridan. All right, he ran hot and cold, baby, and you never knew which way the temperature was going. And Sheridan hung up the phone on me, so he's.
I never got the chance to get hung up on by Sheridan. I wish I could have. I would have lived in a badge of honor, because he could be prickly at times. As far as
prickly is a very good way to describe him. Yeah. The person that probably knows Sheridan the best is Mark Meltzer.
Yeah.
Because Mark would take him out to lunch.
Right.
And Mark, to show you who Mark is and how Mark functioned, I went looking for Sheridan, and when he was still not talking to anybody, and I had a lead on him in Santa Rosa in a assisted living community. And Mark not only let me stay in his house, Mark gave me $250 to go rent a car to go chase down Sheridan, and bought a large basket of cheer, cheeses, fruits, wine, booze. It was a good 30-pound basket. It was substantive for Petey. Okay. And it was from one skydiver to another, brother, this is for you, brother, and that says a lot about Mark,
Yeah. Mark is, a saint on earth. Essentially, he is a good.
He is.
Man.
He is the patron saint of the vortex.
Yes, he's the good. He's also the inventor of the vortex. He has a great quote, and I wish, gosh, what is that quote that he had about? And I wanted to put it. I considered putting it in the beginning of my book, and I hope I could find this quote. That it was actually, I went back and looked because I wanted to find the first time that the term the vortex was ever mentioned in the nexus of Cooper world, right? And I wish that I could find that quote of his, but it's a brilliant quote, and I am really upset that I am trying to find it and I can't find it, but I'll have to.
The first public use of the word vortex or Cooper vortex, and I don't know who's claiming fame to it, but it's probably going to be found on the drop zone.
That's where I found it.
Somewhere in August or the fall, the autumn, so September, October, November, somewhere around there, of 2008, which is when I joined. And it probably got coined by 2 or 3 or 4 of us in one night. And I don't know who mentioned it first. But I think I was talking about the vortex as we were talking about the craziness of this all. And part of the craziness is good old Blevins.
Oh dear.
And Joe. And we had some pot stirrers back in the day. We had some real pot stirrers.
Yeah.
Joe Weber. Woo.
Well, Blevins is still Blevinsing these days.
Yeah.
He's still around. But yeah,
it's unfortunate that Robert can't find a way to make peace with everybody because he has real contributions.
He does. He's just
and he has real energy. I mean, he's been at this for 20 years. Come on, Robert, come on, get your head out of your ass. Join the party. Come on, find a way to make peace with everybody. That's right all the time. Yeah.
Well, and so okay, I for those wondering, I did find it. I'm sorry for the distraction there. This is a great quote from Meltzer. He goes, and this is from 2008. The Cooper vortex is a malevolent blender swirl. Coriolis, Occam, and other sages chopped, diced, and macerated into a stupefying smoothie where logic and reason are pulverized. Batten down the hatches. Ahead lies the vortex. So I love that.
Yeah.
A stupefying smoothie where logic and reason are pulverized. Great.
Yeah. And I like to call it the biker bar, the vortex or the drop zone chat room, that thread. I described it as the biker bar in cyberspace.
It's rough. It's like the Cantina bar in Star Wars, right? It's
worse. No, if you got to watch out for the knife fights. You're going to get stabbed in the back.
It's what did Obi-Wan Kenobi say? It's a wretched hive of scum and villainy. The drop zone can be that way for sure. So, okay, more questions. Let's see. What the hell was Walter Reca doing soaking wet in Clay Elum the same night Cooper jumped?
Well, he was looking for a cup of coffee and a ride home. That's what he was looking for. Now the question is, why was he there? What was the motivation, and who put him there? Vern Jones was willing to pay me to go find out. And add to the whole trilogy or the whole Walter Reca, D.B. Cooper saga that Vern's
grift. I call it. I'm sorry.
The what?
It's a grift. I call it.
Yeah, it's another story. Was Reca really there? Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I guess.
Okay. Was he there as part of a CIA op? Maybe. Is there any connection? Is there some kind of cover up? Is there, how the vortex, the winds blow strong, but that doesn't mean that they are necessarily untruthful.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much weirdness in this case that I guess the skeptic in me would say that a couple things with that is it almost makes me look. Walter Reca had obviously this guy was not a KGB operative. He was not. I mean, he wasn't in MI6, like he said. I mean, he was not. He just wasn't. I mean, again,
How can you prove that?
Yes.
Prove it.
Yes.
So prove to me that he was not an MI6.
Okay. So for one thing, his KGB ID, I know it was MI6. I don't know if he ever going to be MI6. I'm just joking.
Well, he had ID cards for both of them.
Yes. And his KGB ID is laughably bad, for one thing.
Yeah, okay. Right.
And another thing, too, he uses his real name. He couldn't even be cute. He wasn't even smart enough as a person, I don't think, to be like, if I was a KGB operative, my ID for the KGB wouldn't say Walter Reca on it. I mean, so that's why I call him Comrade Reca, because like his KGB ID says it's Walter Reca.
And you think the KGB only hires really smart guys like you?
No, but I think his name would be something other than Walter Reca on his name badge for the KGB. That's what I think. Number two, I know if you recall, I've shown it a few times on here before, I think, that I have a program that costs many hundreds of dollars a month for my law firm that can find anything about anybody anytime. And if you look up, I can look up Sheridan Peterson on there. I see every address he ever had, basically, that's on record. I can do that for Walter Reca, tons and tons of things. I look up Ted Braden, nothing. Literally, it's blank. And so it's like, okay, that's a real CIA operative when it's completely nothing. He didn't exist. He was a ghost. So that's why I'm like, okay, if Braden is blank and Reca, I can see that he worked at McDonald's when he was 20 years old or whatever. Not a CIA guy to me. But that's just me. But I don't know. But Reca liked to tell stories. And I feel Reca,
he's not a very reliable witness.
No, he's not. And it almost makes me think that I almost picture this scenario of a pilot or something, running out of gas in a plane near Clay Elum, landing in a field and walking into town on a wet night. He runs into Jeff Asadich, and this whole thing did happen. And years later, at the VFW or somewhere.
Yeah. So what's he doing in the woods? Soaking wet.
But I'm explaining that.
That's hard to refute. That's a piece of evidence that's hard to refute.
Well, but like I said, I don't think it was him. I just have a scenario where it's like a pilot ran out of gas or something, and years and years later, he's at the VFW hall, and he's telling this story about, the night of DB Cooper, I ran out of gas and I had to walk out of the woods. I bet them folks thought I was DB Cooper, hardy har har. And Reca hears that and goes, "Oh, I can incorporate that." I don't know. Just this guy liked to tell bullshit, and so I don't know. But Jeff Asadich seems reliable. I mean, he's not a.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
I mean,
a cop. That's gives him some credibility.
Whatever happened to him happened. I'll say that. I don't know what it was though. But I'm not a fan of Reca just because again. I don't think Reca's DB Cooper. No,
but I think Reca adds an element that would be helpful. And for me, if I were to write the book that Vern Jones wanted me to write about what's the real story of Walter Reca and what's the real relationship he had with the CIA, and was he any kind of contractor to the Vanell Corporation and the CIA, and how does anybody like Reca get recruited into the CIA? Because the main pathway into the CIA is you go to Yale and you hang out with all those guys who are being groomed to go into intelligence services, But a bozo like Walter Reca is going to need another pathway. And being a welder and a drinker and a stupido, kind of guy who likes guns and killing people and jumping out of airplanes and living rough and doesn't need much to keep him happy. There's a place for him in the CIA and KGB. There's a place like that.
Useful idiots. Look at Oswald. Right?
Yes, bingo. That the Russian, to use the Russian term. Yeah,
the useful idiot. So it's possible.
They call them UIs, right?
Yeah. You're right. I mean, that's what Oswald probably was, and Skip Hall maybe. I don't know.
Skip Hall was a classic.
Skip Hall was smarter than that.
Sure. He didn't take the Yale pathway. he took the New Haven Community College pathway.
But he was still there, though. It was
He
still
was,
there.
he was on board. He was in the program, baby.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So let's see. Okay.
So speaking of Skip Hall,
yes.
So the author, John
Limbach, he's in the chat.
Is he coming? He's in the chat?
Yeah, Packer's here. Yep. Hey, Packer.
Is he coming to the conference?
He is. He's going to speak about Skip Hall. Yep.
Bingo.
He's doing a thing. Pat. Limbach is who I'm partnered with for CooperCon with Chris.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He's part of the triumvirate. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Packers.
He didn't say much in that video that I watched where you announced.
Yeah, he was having.
You announced your Cooper coup.
The Cooper coup. No. John had internet issues that night, so he couldn't do much. That's why he wasn't speaking much. But okay, so let's see. We had a question there. What do you think about Max Gunther?
What do I think about Max Gunther?
Yeah, about the book and all that stuff.
I don't know a whole lot. And Darren Schaefer gifted me a copy of the book, The Real Story of D.B. Cooper, whatever it is titled. And I gave up reading it about page 7 or 8. It was just filled with too many, the red and orange striped parachute, and Clara found him wearing a big, thick wool sweater.
Captain Scott going back and talking to Cooper. We know that didn't happen.
Yeah, right. And I go, enough for me. Did he know stuff? Is there really a Clara? Maybe. My senses, without doing any research, I'm just listening to other people and reading a few things here and there. By the way, I have a fondness to the Clara story because they spent the money, they washed the money in Atlantic City and then moved to Long Island, New York, which is where I grew up. So,
right.
So it's like, hey, where on the island did you live? You down in Rockaway, down in the beach? So anyway, Gunther, I think Gunther's basically a straight shooter. I think he was basic, decent. He was a working writer. He made a living writing, and I got to tip my hat. He raised a family.
Sure.
Being a
work career out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, that's a feat.
Now, what would be interesting, and this is where the story gets a little difficult, and the difficulty feeds my curiosity, is where are his notes? What do the kids have? What are the kids telling us about what Pop said around the dinner table about these phone calls he was getting, or letters he was getting from Clara and D.B. Cooper? I would like to hear more of that family narrative. And I forget who was checking into the Gunther story. Somebody.
Dave Fudman. And Andrade as well.
Dave Fudman, yeah. And I remember they called me when they were working it, and they were getting resistance from Gunther's kids. And that's a red flag. Why don't you want to talk about Pop? And that's a key element, I think, in the Gunther story. But and Himmelsbach, what was the relationship between Gunther and Himmelsbach?
It wasn't good.
Ralph had a real penchant for rubbing people the wrong way and feeding them misinformation. So,
Well, now,
what can I say? I liked Ralph. All right, Ralph treated me decent. All right, thank God he. When he confronted me in his driveway, thank God he didn't have a shotgun in his head, because I'm really pretty sure I had a 50-50 chance of not surviving that encounter, but
he was especially curmudgeonly by the time you got around to him, for sure.
But as soon as I mentioned Jerry Thomas, he transformed in front of my eye.
Yeah, that's
for those
interesting.
who don't know Jerry Thomas.
Yep.
Jerry Thomas goes back to the days of Sluggo and Joe Weber and being in the Cooper Vortex. And Jerry and Ralph had a father-son relationship of great dimension. They both loved each other. And Jerry told me he's a second father to me. So, and Ralph Himmelsbach's wife, when Ralph walked in the door with me tagging behind him, and I said, "We got a guy here. He's a friend of Jerry's." "Oh, really? You're a friend of Jerry's?" I mean, it was like, come on, sit down.
Well,
you want a cup of coffee? How is Jerry? Let's do it.
Yeah. So Jerry vouched for you in a way, or his name at least vouched for you.
His name.
Yeah. So
and I hardly knew Jerry. I met him once. So.
Well, the Gunther stuff. What changed recently, Bruce, is we had. So the issue with me and Gunther was always that. I mean, I was there. In fact, I was the one who pulled the letter. We were at Ralph Himmelsbach's grandson's house, and I found the Clara letter in a shoebox of letters. I found the one that's in the book from Clara to Himmelsbach, and I was like, oh. Of course, Dave Feudman was there, and I was like, here you go. And of course, Dave immediately, he's like, everybody step back, because there might be DNA on this. He's like, everybody get back, So he's like, okay, Ryan touched it, I touched it, let's keep account of who's touched it, right? And he's actually, he has actually submitted some DNA from the stamp that's on there, and it's male DNA apparently. But and it can be sequenced for some more money, but it's expensive to do that.
Keep that going. Come on.
Well, but I was a person who felt that it was completely fiction because just here's the sense, Bruce, if you're a writer and you're under contract with a company, but like he was, Gunther had a publisher that he always used, and somebody comes to you saying and feeds you all this information about Cooper, especially like things like, he went to Rutgers and he was on the crew team after World War II he was a paratrooper. It's like, I could find out who that is. And I'm sure my publishers would rather have me, crawfish this lady and expose the real Cooper in a book and win a Pulitzer Prize than, tell this quasi fictional story about, whatever, why would he have loyalty to Clara, right? If she was the real deal. So I thought maybe it was fiction, but I felt that Gunther was hoaxing Himmelsbach a little bit because I also found a letter in Himmelsbach's paperwork from the publishing company saying, "Hey, we're doing press releases for this book coming out. We heard that you got a letter from Clara. What do you think of it? Can we use some comments from you?" So they were eliciting some comments from him. So I almost felt like they had invented that, if Clara was an invented character by Gunther, it's a narrative device, like, call me Ishmael, right? If he had invented Clara, then he could have sent that to Himmelsbach to try to, I don't know, do something with Himmelsbach. But that was my thought, okay, that maybe Gunther was messing with him because, hey, there's no crime about messing with a former FBI agent, right? Because you're not wasting, it's a crime. Yeah, it's a crime. It's mean and unethical, but it's not like it's a crime to actually waste the FBI's time when you knowingly they're doing it.
A waste of retiree. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, well, there's no, and I've gone through the files more than anybody else, probably other than Flyjack, right? And nothing about Gunther at all in 45,000 pages, right? Nothing at all until like 2 months ago in a vault release. Sure enough, here's Max Gunther writing a letter to the FBI in 82 saying, somebody has been contacting me claiming to be, it's redacted, which probably means the former wife of Cooper. I'm pretty sure this is a hoax, but I thought maybe you should know about it. And if you have any information, maybe you could let me know, or I don't really know where to take this, yada, 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 Max Gunther. So the fact that Max Gunther actually did contact the FBI at least tells me that somebody was doing this to him.
Yeah, that he is legit.
Yes, he's
not crafting a scam.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the problem is when people use the Gunther book as for clues, is that let's pretend that Clara was real, or Gunther thought Clara was real. He's not going to put real information in there. He's going to change names and dates and things to protect her identity. Because in the book, you didn't get this far. In the book, it says Clara grew up in like Woodland or somewhere. She had 2 brothers, and she went to a community college, and she was working as a librarian at the time on a house next to a pond. Like, if Clara was a real person, people would know who it was pretty quick because that's a small community. And so if Clara was legit, or if Gunther thought she was legit, he's going to change facts around and do things to protect her identity and also protect his source or whatever. So using Gunther as a clue for clues just never, even if it's real, I don't think you could use it for clues. But it is weird though, because the fact that the character in Gunther he sells industrial chemicals, and now we have the tie being covered in industrial chemicals, right? And then there's arguably a scene that takes place maybe at like an Elsinore in the book. So there's these kind of weird things, but I don't buy it much. But respect to people who do buy it. I'm not going to dog anybody for chasing a lead in this case, because it's a cold case. Every lead's valuable. Every lead could, you never know when the Rosetta Stone's going to pop out of the ground in Egypt, right?
Yeah, and there's also an aspect in terms of the book, and it didn't resonate with me, so I didn't pursue it. But I think there's value in reading the book and digesting all of that information, knowing that all of it may be misinformation, and it may be not even truthful. That has no bearing, it's no reflection on reality, but it has something. A context that has a flavor. It tells you something. I think it informs you in some way about who Cooper is.
Well, it's remarkably well written. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So you didn't get that far enough, but it's actually, I couldn't put it down. Gunther's was extremely talented as a writer, extremely talented. But
maybe I got jealous again.
Yeah, I know. It was really good though. So, the next question, we'll go on from Gunther. Okay, so somebody says, where was it? I lost it. Sorry. Okay, shards. Somebody said, why are you so interested in the shards?
Why am I so interested in
Yes.
shards? It's one of the big mysteries of the case, as far as I'm concerned. I've seen video and of fairly sizable shards, as big as your thumb.
There's the shards there.
Yeah, those are the shards that
they have. Yeah.
That the FBI had and were confirmed by the Citizen Sleuth and Tom Kay. Those are the tiny little shards, but They were big shards, as big as a thumbnail or even bigger, as big as your thumb digit, that first digit. So an inch and a half, by inch and a half by an inch kind of thing.
Right.
Big enough to have some of the numbers on them, serial numbers. And the video shows FBI agents putting them in evidence envelopes, plasticine envelopes. And that's what Dorwin Schroeder told me. Is that what he did? And he's interviewed in that video by KCTV out of Portland.
Whoever that is.
Channel, I forget, whether it's NBC or ABC or CBS or whatever. And once those shards went into the evidence envelopes on Tina Bar, they've never been seen since by anybody who's speaking publicly or has spoken publicly. They were not documented. Anybody that was worked the case doesn't know anything about them.
I think that they ended up.
I asked him back specifically. I wrote him a letter. Where did those shards go? Because he was in charge of the shards. It was his team that found them and put them in the evidence. And he said and he didn't answer me. But Jerry Thomas responded saying, Ralph wants me to tell you that everything that they found at Tina Bar went up to Seattle.
Yeah, I think that the bigger shards ended up being part of the money that was split between Brian and the insurance company, because Brian tells me the story when I was doing that chapter on the book on Tina Bar. When I interviewed Brian, he explained to me kind of a funny scenario. I didn't realize this, that when the court returned the money when Tusaw, won his lawsuit to get the money back, minus $13. So basically 13 bills were kept by the FBI, and those are the ones you always see in the pictures. These right here, these are the ones that are kept by the FBI, and there's some shards there too, Bruce. If you look at that, there's some pieces there.
Yeah, so up in the shards in the upper right-hand corner were
Yeah.
the kinds of shards that Darwin was talking about. that they put in, that they found separately in the sand column. It wasn't like right next to where the bundles were found. This was in the general area. Yeah. Dorman told me that I think he was finding. Well, Dorman told me a lot of things, and it's unfortunately misleading information, and it doesn't add up, and I wasn't able to confirm. At one point, he told me there was they found so many shards. It was like there was a shard trail that even a blind man could follow. I mean, that's his quote.
Well, I mean, if you
60 feet, they found shards in a plume 60 feet long.
Right. Well,
really?
Well, the shards, as we know, the shards are these bits and pieces that are torn off the money. You know, that's what the shards are.
That's what this appears. Then you have another FBI agent. You have the Mike McFeeters,
yeah,
statements that he now walked away from. He hung up the phone on me when I tried to zero in on it, where he found what he called shards along the tide line, and that they were finding money every other shovelful.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of
it was money coming up in the sand. Now, tide line on a river, and what I think that meant, what he meant by tide line was the upper flow of debris, so it would look like a tide line. You know, there would be a line of twigs and branches and garbage and soda cans and McDonald's wrappers and things like that up where the water had pushed it up.
Well, you know, one of the things I've learned doing research lately is that the week before the money find, the Fazio's cattle got out and ran all through Tina Bar. Their cattle were loose and they were just running rampant on Tina Bar, and they had to herd them in. And if you listen to, for example, if you listen to the Tina Bar story, you know, Slim Ingram always says in the old interviews, he goes, I told my boy to, you know, smooth off a spot, right? And, you know, Brian always says that he smoothed off a spot. Well, the reason they were smoothing off spots is because that the beach was still pockmarked from hoof marks.
Okay. So
perhaps the trample of the cattle tore the money apart, or, you know, I don't know. But then we have the cattle mutilations, Bruce. Don't forget the cattle mutilations.
Brian, I never forget. Never forget the woo-woo.
I mean, it's Woo Woo Wednesday, Bruce.
Well, there we go.
Thank you to Nikki Broughton for that. Okay. So yeah, do
all your listeners know about the cattle mutilation at the Fazio place?
No. Why don't you tell them?
Okay, let's briefly just touch on
Please.
it. All right. We won't go deep into the woo-woo, and we'll come back to Cooper. But in 1991, so 10 years or so after the money find, the Fazios had 6 or 7 cattle mutilated, and in the traditional way that cattle are mutilated, in the woo-woo way, which means that there was no evidence of the death. So this wasn't predation. There was no blood thrown around in the body parts, and a lot of struggle, and the mud and the soil is torn up or anything like that. The cattle are laying on their side, and various body parts are taken. So very selective. An eye, one eye, but not both. Part of a jaw, some genitals, various selective parts. And that's the traditional cattle mutilation scenario that has been going on for decades and has been well documented by the NBC reporter out of Denver, Linda Moulton Howe, who has now made a career out of chasing this stuff down. So she's written a book called Strange Harvest, has a video out. Well done, excellent. She's Pulitzer Prize level. You know, she wins awards, things like that. So the Fazios were contacted by Linda Moulton Howe saying, hey, can I come down and see what's going on? And they said, no, thanks. We're the guys who found the Cooper money. Get out of here. We've had enough. We've had enough of you people. But the Fazios called the cops. Cops show up, Sheriff's Department, County Sheriff's Department. They called in a forensic pathology team from Oregon State University, came up from Albany, in Oregon, and ascertained that the surgeries done on the cattle were done with very sophisticated electronic equipment that left no blood and left no scarring. And there was no fluids found in any of the body cavities that were exposed, which is extraordinary. And whoever did this was very skilled with highly sophisticated equipment. And they had no other explanation other than that. And that is the findings on most, almost, if not all, of all cattle mutilations. And all the incisions were done in a cookie cutter kind of like miniature V's. So it wasn't a straight linear cut. It was which apparently minimizes bleeding. And that's the Fazios. They did the right thing. They called the cops. And
what year was this?
91. Thereabouts, early 90s. Just about the time that Tina leaves the convent.
Oh, God. That's always something.
And people wonder, Bruce, how come you just love the woo-woo? And it's like, because it is so cool.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, I love the alien stuff. Yeah, we'll have to discuss that later on. The incident that I was describing is that Brian said a funny story. So when the money comes back, the FBI gets to keep 13 bills. Brian and the insurance company, Royal Globe, are going to split, I think, 260 or something, right? And so all the money was laid out on a table in the Portland FBI office. They flew Brian and Slim Ingram from, they were living in California at the time, and they flew them to Portland with Tusaw there too. And all the money is on this big conference room table, as Brian describes it, because by this time, Brian is probably 14 years old. And so he remembers it pretty well. And Slim, his dad, was basically, they flipped a coin to see who went first, and they got to pick, and then insurance would pick. Ingram's would pick, insurance pick, just picking which dollars were best, right? Well, the insurance guy didn't give a damn, right? He's just there on an assignment. And he started getting really pissed off because Slim is like looking at the dollars, each one, looking for ones that have good serial numbers for resale, right? Because he understands the value of this. So Brian did end up with a good amount of these dollars, of these $20 bills, but it's kind of a funny scenario.
Like a couple hundred. Bills.
About 130 pieces at least. Well, pieces, fragments, most of them weren't. But he still has some of them. He still has a good bit of them left, actually. I'll have to buy one from him sometime. But anyway, I believe they had I think 3 or 4 buyers within like the first hour. And I found a news article where his mother's like, we got calls within an hour. We already sold them for like $1,000 a piece, whatever. In fact, Himmelsbach, I learned this recently. Himmelsbach, his wife bought him one for a gift. So
second wife.
Yeah, I probably a second wife.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I did not see a $20 bill when I was visiting his grandson's house. I don't know where that is. The real question though is, Royal Globe, where did all their 130 Cooper bills go? They probably just ended up, Royal Globe went bankrupt and they've sold out to somebody else. I don't know who they are now, but I believe Georgia or somebody contacted them a while back, and they had no idea what we were talking about. And so, but there are, unless they're in a landfill somewhere, but there's probably a drawer somewhere that has 130 Cooper bills out there. We found recently I think I sent this to you, maybe in the last vault release before this recent one, there was a story in there about a news reporter for one of those local channels in Portland received a call from a guy saying, hey, I'm friends with a couple who don't want to go on TV or anything, who they want to stay out of it, but they found some money at Kalama, right? I sent that to you. And
yeah, you did.
A family found money on the beach in Kalama.
We locals out here pronounce it Kalama.
Kalama. Okay, there we go. Kalama.
Thank you.
like a calamity. Okay.
Yeah.
Kalama, the Vortex calamity. Okay. So Kalama, and he said he read off the serial number to the lady, and it was one of the Cooper. It was a Cooper serial number. And the woman met with this guy, and he handed her the $20 bill, and he walked off, and she called the FBI. And basically, there's nothing more about it. And I think we've talked about this, that the 302 that memorialized the FBI going out there and getting the 20 from this news reporter was written like 5 months later, which sounds like it wasn't a priority to them, which means it was probably a hoax because they have to write 302s about everything. So everything has to be memorialized in some way. So, but it sounded intriguing.
It is. It's very intriguing.
And then
it speaks to what happened at Tina Bar. Was money floating around? It's unlikely that Cooper buried the money at Tina Bar and buried some down in Kalama. But
what about the tornado?
20 miles apart.
There's a great theory. One of the Tina Bar theories, which is just as valid as anything else, is that there was a large tornado that came through there, in like literally right over Vancouver. I forget what year it was. Maybe somebody in the chat remembers, but I think it was in the 70s. It was at some point in the 70s. It was a big old tornado, and it was like an E4. It was a legitimate twister, and it went right through Vancouver. And some says, maybe Cooper's money bag was torn apart. And, what's interesting is that there's actually a 302 of somebody reporting seeing a bunch of cash outside Kalama in the trees. There's a 302 where they're saying, we're seeing a bunch of $20 bills in the trees. You should come investigate. And there's no follow-up 302, but they got a call about money in trees at some point. I think it might have been after that tornado. So,
yeah. See, so the FBI. So this is what this really is telling us. What tells me is that the FBI's response to the DB Cooper case, their investigation, was selective. A lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of agents goes into the Elsinore thing. Okay, a lot of checking skydivers and all of that. But the money, Dorwin Schroeder told me that they didn't go up and down the beach talking to beach guys, fishermen, things like that. Not much. That the properties that were next to Jason, either up downstream or upstream from the Fazios, they talked to those people. But there was no comparable investigation of the shoreline.
Yeah, there's the.
I find that disappointing. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, you would think there would. You're right. There probably should have been. In fact, the media, though, there are media articles from that. This is why newspapers.com is such an amazing website, because I can look up all these articles written by these people. So they did interview a lot of fishermen locally, especially one named Tipper, who taught Brian how to fish. Actually, a guy named Tipper, who was a World War I veteran at the time. But Tipper said that the Tina Bar, he's on that beach every day, he said, and they have stuff. He told the news, he goes, stuff washes up here daily, because this is apparently there is some sort of I think the river bends right around there, and there is some sort of
no, not really.
There is some sort of hydrology reason for why that.
There may be, in terms of currents and things.
Yeah, something about it.
Because just upstream from Tina Bar is Caterpillar Island,
which
is a swampy, small, basically looks like an overgrown sandbar.
Yeah.
And the waterway between the island
real narrow
and the mainland is very shallow and very narrow. It's like, how did this place ever get to be called an island?
Sure.
It's like just a swampy, and it's overgrown with trees and things like that. And with some of the film crews that have gone down there, it's always been, when are you guys going to get serious about checking out Caterpillar Island? Because it's just a couple hundred yards down that way.
Right.
And it's like, have you seen what, who's going to go looking in there? You're going to be you can't even take 2 steps in any direction without tripping over something,
Yeah.
So that element, what are the hydraulics? What are the currents that would form and maintain something like that?
Well,
Not that far away, and it's basic. But the Columbia River is basically a straight shot at that point.
Well, and as he does it constantly, Tom Kay really put a number on a lot of things last year at the conference when he pointed out that he found no silt on the money, which silt is like very fine particles. If there was any silt at all from a flood, because if for those who don't understand, picture a flood in your brain, it's very brown. The water is always very brown, and it's because it's churning up the dirt. Because it's so powerful that it's just scooping up loads of dirt, silt. And so if the money arrived there via a flood somehow, then the money should have been covered in silt particles. But the money was wet, or it had been wet at some point.
Right.
But
it got exposed to river water. Yeah.
Right. But it was clean immersion is the way that Tom said it. So how did it get wet without being in a flood? And then, of course, we know from research that Chris Cunningham went and got $300 of ones and bundled them the same way that the Cooper money was and threw it in the bathtub and it sinks. So the money wouldn't float, right? So Tina Bar is its all other thing. We'll move on from Tina Bar because it's a headache. But okay,
headache. I love Tina Bar.
It's just what's weird. Here's something strange is part of me whenever I get it. Maybe I think about how Paul McCartney said that he wrote Yellow Submarine because he was drifting asleep one night. And when you're in that weird twilight between sleep and wakefulness as you're falling asleep, your brain goes to weird places sometimes. And he thought of Yellow Submarine. That's how he came up with it, right? Well, when I lay awake and I'm falling asleep, sometimes I do go, it really is bizarre that Tina Mucklow and Tina Bar are there. Like, it would be like this. If, let's just say that Alice Hancock had been the go-to with Cooper, and we find money buried behind a place called Alice's Restaurant. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is almost, it's almost unbelievable in a way.
And when the money was found at Tina Bar, Tina Mucklow is living upstream, about 20 miles up, 20, 25, 30 miles upstream in Gresham, Oregon.
Gresham, Oregon. Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hate to. I mean, that's about as far as I'll go with the woo woo. Is I go. I don't know. That seems.
That's you're in there. That's certified woo woo. Yeah.
Like I said, I think that we're so apt to be like, we're so apt to go. There was no coincidence there. Or I mean, we're so apt to say, oh, that's just a coincidence. But like I said, if money was found behind Alice's Restaurant and Alice was the woman, we'd go, well, that's really weird. And I don't know, but that's what I think. Okay. Nikki says that the tornado actually destroyed the school in Orchards. So that was that's pretty serious.
That's
thing
serious.
There. Let's see. The people have it and don't. Let's see. The fact that Jay says the fact that no one knows where Cooper landed means that Eric Ewis's new search area on the ground is a great idea. I mean, look, I'm just gonna filibuster for a second here. The problem is with Eric's flight path stuff is that, look, it used to be a mystery. It wasn't Sage radar. Flight path used to be a bit more of a mystery until we started actually doing real research on it and talking and finding the people who made the flight path. Like Chris Cunningham has talked to the guy. He's still alive, Spangler. Thomas Spangler, he lives in North Carolina or somewhere. He was a captain at the time, and he was on the sled test too. But Spangler's like, basically it was explained to us that when a plane was hijacked back then, okay, if it barked out transponder code 3100, which was hijack, then the Sage radar system would automatically start tracking it and record its location on a computer hard drive, which that was news to me. I didn't even know there were computer hard drives in 71, but there were. And the Sage radar every 5 seconds would ping a hijacked aircraft because It's a bogey, essentially. That's the main thing. Because it's missile defense and Soviet bomber defense. It's a bogey in airspace. So they pinged it every 5 seconds, and its location was restored in real time. That's how the flight path map is actually marked 11/25/71, because they got it the next day. The FBI did, because they were able to just print out the coordinates and draw it on a map. Okay, from the coordinates. I mean, these were highly trained people. In fact, as Spangler explained, they would not let you had to be in the Air Force training as a radar tech for a year before you got to operate SAGE or be around SAGE. So these were pretty decent airmen who knew what they were doing. So you have this plane tracked every 5 seconds, pinging, ping, 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 all the way down to Reno. And, Eric says that, oh, well, for one thing, Eric says, well, SAGE wasn't working that day. Well, yeah, it was. Of course it was. SAGE does not take a break. It's nuclear defense. Okay. It's not like it's not like, ETA. We'll be back in an hour, stores closed. No, they don't shut down. Number two, we had the actual guy who was like, yeah, I was there. We did it. SAGE, I took it. And we have the FBI saying Spangler came over from the SAGE blockhouse at McCord. I mean, it's all documented. Okay. Then he says, well, they were tracking the chase planes. Well, we know that's not true, because the chase planes were flying S-turns because they couldn't keep up. They were going too fast. So why, if they're pinging these fighter jets, for one thing, they can't ping the fighter jets because that was a safeguard. They weren't literally Air Force jets or friendly jets could not be like tracked that way by SAGE, because they didn't want to accidentally shoot down one of their own planes. Okay. They had different transponder frequencies, whatever. That was all been explained. But what a coincidence that the flight path that's made by SAGE radar perfectly mimics a lumbering 727 trying its best to navigate V-23, right? It's instead of wide S-turns. But so I have the flight path. And again, these guys thought they had a bomb on the plane. They're not going to drunk drive. I mean, like, vector airways are like highways in the sky. Okay. People don't realize that like it's the same way in the ocean. There are highways in the ocean, essentially. Ships just don't go out in the ocean and drive around. So these airways, it's just like if you're driving a car. They're going down the road. They're going down V-23. They're not going to drunk drive 12 miles west or east. Yeah, west, and not tell anybody. And what was remarkable too is that Eric likes to bring up Cliff Ammerman a lot, but you were in 2022. Cliff Ammerman's on stage in Vancouver, and the question is asked of him. You watched it. He watched it with his own eyes. The plane. Is the flight path accurate? Somebody asked him. He goes, well, from my estimation, I believe the quote was something like, Flight 305 never deviated from Victor 23. And Eric just shrugs and goes, well, I disagree. And it's like, you can't say that. I mean, you can, but anyway, the problem is like,
well, in fairness to Eric and in fairness to Cliff Ammerman to some degree, first of all, I spoke with Cliff. I had coffee with him up here in Gresham, Graham, Oregon, Graham, Washington, where he lives. Cliff struck me as the kind of guy who does not want to make enemies and likes making friends, and will tell you, I don't think he lies, but it seems as if he shifts the focus of what he's saying to get into closer proximity to what he thinks you want to hear.
I see.
So Eric was very much, trying to push the plane to Tina Bar, the westernmost flight path. And that's what I heard from Cliff, was the plane could have been on or near Tina Bar and would have still been in Victor 23. That's what I heard from Cliff.
Yeah. So Victor 23 at the time was 10 miles wide. So they had clearance to be anywhere within the 10 miles, right? But Eric's most hated enemy is the unnamed basically, there's an FBI file from, it just says Portland Tower, and the guy's name is redacted. So it was some guy, some higher up in the Portland Tower, and he says, as the plane approached Portland, it was about a mile. He goes, it was a mile east of the center line of Victor 23, mile east of the center line. Eric hates that guy because,
yeah.
And he calls the guy, he says the guy was eating a ham sandwich. He calls the guy the ham sandwich guy or whatever. And it's okay, but again, Eric is thinking outside the box, and I appreciate that to a point. But my issue is that when you do all this publicity,
and Eric found Cliff Ammerman.
Sure, I mean, Eric has done.
And was the first person to talk to him about that night. Cliff has never been, to this day, has never been interviewed.
Well, yeah. Well, the FBI. Eric likes to bring up that. I guess the issue with Cliff being interviewed by the FBI is I don't believe, and I wish Chris Cunningham was here. He would know. I don't think Cliff was in charge of the plane at the time. I think that he was.
Cliff told me he was at the time.
No, he picked it up. Now we know that because it's in the transcript. It's in the air traffic control transcript when they switch over to Cliff, and I think it wasn't at the time because Cliff can't answer. Whether. Radicek, I hope Bill's not watching, but because I'm going to say this, but we love Bill Radicek, but Bill Radicek is I call him the professor emeritus of Big Fish University because, he kind of changes his stories over the years and,
I've never heard him tell the same story twice.
Correct. He's a talker.
Yeah.
So, for example, he says he was flying the plane, when we know that the plane was actually on autopilot. That's very clearly indicated by all kinds of metrics that they had set on autopilot because they didn't want to do anything fishy. But I forgot where I was going with Bill Radicek. But anyway, okay, I'll get off of Eric's stuff. Ryan, did you ever ask Bill Mitchell if he thinks? Yes, yeah, Brad. Did you ever ask Bill Mitchell if he thinks Cooper should be prosecuted for this crime? Absolutely. I did ask him that because I was just curious, and he said, absolutely, I want the DB Cooper prosecuted right now because he threatened my life and threatened the lives of others, and he committed a crime and so on. But what's interesting, of course, is whether the FBI would do that. And it's hard to say.
Yeah, after drinking several beers with Bill over a couple conferences, I don't think Bill is actually that gung-ho for prosecution. I think my take on Bill Mitchell is that a part of him still feels threatened and feels, my life was in danger. This guy was willing to kill me and put himself in circumstances where he could have done that. And thank God Tina and everybody else, saved our bacon. And there's another part of Bill, I think, that's more circumspect. And it's well, thank God I'm still alive. And it's kind of like a live and let live kind of aspect. Bill is not a warrior. Bill is not a cultural warrior. He's not, it's like, this guy's got to burn, no, he's not that kind of guy.
Definitely not. Packer Limbach says, talk to Bruce about the weather that night and why Ralph made it seem much colder. Why did Ralph Himmelsbach make it worse than it was?
Well, I don't know that Ralph is the guy that started the -7 degree narrative, but that's written in stone.
Yeah, FBI. Celsius is the issue.
Yeah, they forgot to say, oh, that's Celsius.
Right, it's not.
No, no. Now, does Ralph know the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius?
I would think so.
Probably does, but certainly in his interviews, his video interviews, Ralph never specified whether it was.
No, he played it up for effect.
He did, yeah, and I think the FBI was glad that he did that. I think the FBI was very happy to have Ralph Himmelsbach be the face of the official investigation for decades. And probably the guys who were actually doing the grunt work up in Seattle probably were happy to have him in front of the camera. Because internally, I can tell you from Dorwin left the FBI primarily because of the flack that he was getting from his colleagues for being the DB Cooper case agent in Portland after Ralph retired 2 weeks after the money find.
Yeah.
And Dorwin took over for him.
Mm-hmm.
Dorwin was the PIO at the beach at Tina Bar.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later is the case agent in Portland on the Cooper case. And he told me that within the year he took over Ralph's job of being the go-to guy for TV interviews and radio interviews. And he encountered so much resistance and disrespect in the office, in the Portland office, that it was like the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. Because working in the FBI is not all roses and rainbows.
Yeah, sure.
You want a promotion? Well, you're going to have to move you and your family from here to Texas.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck that. I don't want to do that shit. I don't want to sit next to this guy who has bad breath every day. Can I get another office? No.
Right.
Suck it up, buttercup. So there's all kinds of little internal frictions and things going on, let alone, I think we should investigate this way. No, we don't have the resources. We got to do it that way. So there's all kinds of things. And Dorwin has he gave an indication to me that his feelings about the Bureau are mixed. Some of it was good, some of it wasn't. And is he proud and happy that he was an FBI agent? Oh yeah. But it wasn't a bed of roses either.
No, it wasn't. And Dorwin got, I believe he was there when I think it's Dorwin I'm thinking about. He was there when a guy named Glenn Tripp was killed.
Yeah, he was on the phone with Tripp.
Yeah.
Tripp
that bothered him.
Yeah. That's one of the things that really pisses him off about the FBI. He is tasked with trying to talk down to de-escalate a hijacking, and is on the phone and is getting somewhere, and his colleagues decide to take it upon himself. No, we're going to blow him away.
He was a kid too. He was like 20 years old, I think, maybe. Yeah, he was young.
No, I don't think so.
I think Glenn Tripp was pretty damn young, actually.
Oh, Tripp may have been young.
Yeah, Tripp was young.
No. Dorwin got the job because he already had a master's degree in psychology and behavioral psychology on the FBI's nickel to become a de-escalator. To be that kind of that. So he got summoned up to do the Tripp skyjacking, and to have his guys kill his client, in effect.
Yeah.
And Dorwin, when he told me, was emotionally shaken.
Yeah.
Telling me that story. So that gets to some bedrock values about, what do you do with the cowboys that you got to work with? And they're dangerous, but they're just freaking gun happy, trigger happy.
Yeah, they were, and they really wanted to. In the Cooper case, what's interesting is 2 weeks before the Cooper case. In fact, we've got interestingly enough, Bill Rollins is in the chat, and
hi, Bill.
Yes, 2 weeks before the Cooper case, we've got in Jacksonville Bill can
tell you all about that. Yep.
Oh yeah, and so basically, a woman and her ex-husband, or not, I think they were estranged. I guess they weren't divorced yet, but she ended up basically he took over a plane, and instead of talking it through, the FBI, I believe, shot the tires out or something.
Yeah, and they wouldn't let it refuel. They shut out the tires.
Yeah,
and they wouldn't allow it to take off.
Yeah, and so then the guy shot the pilot, shot her, and then killed himself. And in fact, Lakich sued the FBI, and that was the very first time the FBI ever lost a wrongful death suit by a federal court.
They did lose. They did lose.
Yeah, the FBI lost. I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the FBI is the only time. It's the first time.
The wrongful death suit brought by the
Lakich. Yeah, it was the first time the FBI had lost a wrongful death.
Yeah. I didn't know that they had lost. I thought they had won. All right.
No, yeah, they lost. It was a huge judgment against them. Yeah. Well, no, yeah, and so so that was 2 weeks earlier, and that was big in the news. And so, NIROP was very firm about the FBI saying, look, leave it alone. And Himmelsbach, you know, basically the FBI's go-to back then, at least, I don't know what it is now, but their main procedure was in any extortions or kidnappings, they allowed the victim of it it was up to them if they wanted to be extorted, essentially. Like, do you want to pay the ransom or not? We'll let you have the opportunity to do it that way first. And so that was what they did at the time, at least. Mm-hmm. And so they asked Nyrop, who was the president of Northwest, and he said, yeah, we'll pay it. You know, we'll get it back later. Just don't damage the plane. Don't damage the crew, whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the FBI, what's interesting about Himmelsbach, you mentioned Himmelsbach, I did find there is a document in the FBI files. So during the Jack Kofelt thing that was going on back in the late 70s, Mike Wallace was going to do a story about the possible connections between Kofelt and I think the MLK assassination or something like that. Something really strange like that. And he sent a guy named I think his name is Gorin. He's a producer for 60 Minutes. And Gorin shows up and he interviews Himmelsbach first in Portland and then goes to Seattle. And when he goes to Seattle, Nichols goes, wait, you talked to who? Like, we're the case agents here, not him. And there's this great memo from Nichols where he's like, I'm picturing Nichols like with smoke coming out of his ears, going, typing this thing to the director of the FBI. It's in the files. He goes, you know, someone needs to tell Himmelsbach down there that, you know, he is not the case agent and that everything should be directed through us. He goes, or why don't we just transfer the case to them if he wants to have it so much? And it's like this really bitchy memo. I'll email you. I'll email it to you later. It's funny, but it's really this kind of bitchy memo to the director complaining about Himmelsbach. And he's like, you know, Himmelsbach has been on radio and news, 55 times in the past year talking about Cooper.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's also a document where Nichols lists out every time Himmelsbach was on a radio station or a TV station in like a year period. It's kind of funny. It's really, but there was some back and forth between them. So next thing, we'll jump. Bill Rollins, again, asks about, he says, what do you say about the witness who saw Cooper that night, 2.5 miles west of Ariel? He's talking about Babitsky.
Yeah. Okay.
Jean Babitsky was her name. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Jean Babitsky was driving to her father's cabin in Ariel about 11:30 on the night of the hijacking, and she says that she saw a guy walking down the road wearing slacks, dark slacks, a white dress shirt, and a black hair. That's it. And she thought it was weird because she had never seen anybody walking that road at night, which apparently, that is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And her father attested. Now, she did not tell anybody this until the Army came around in March of 72, knocking on doors again. He goes, oh, yeah, I remember that night. And the father said, yeah, I remember that because she told her mother that she locked her car doors immediately because she was frightened or whatever. But she couldn't say, they showed her a sketch and she goes, I can't identify that as the guy. I didn't really see his face much, right? The problem is, of course, that's interesting. But the problem is, for me, is that Cooper didn't jump north of this is north of the Lewis River, okay? I can't put Cooper north of the Lewis River. We know where the plane was at 8:11, and it was past there, basically. Anyway, but also, here's something I found out recently, was that there was a burglary that night at the Casey's General Store, which is in between, I guess, La Center and Ariel. Is it Woodland and Ariel on that road, or is it La Center? My brain's
La Center is south of Woodland.
Yeah, I think the road. I think Lewis River Road is between Woodland and.
Yeah. So there's when you leave the Woodland area, you can go north of the river. You can drive along the river basically, and that's the road to Ariel and to Merwin Dam. And and to this day it's still really rural. There's not much there. South of the river through La Center, and you don't go into the center of La Center, but you head towards it. you can get the southern shoreline river road. And that is the area that gets through the rolling country. There's a lot of McMansions and dairy farms and cattle. People are running cattle on 20 acres and that kind of thing down there. It's pretty wide open. And that's where a lot of initial searching went on. I talked to people there that still remember the National Guard and the troopers from St. Louis coming in on helicopters, woefully unprepared, didn't know where they were asking directions. Their maps were all fashukta and had really bad attitudes, and very arrogant and pushing their badges around, that kind of thing. And people, they left with a bad taste in their mouth. So
Yeah.
that's the topography and what's going on down there.
Right. And I'm trying to find if I can, here we go. I'll bring this up for people. So there were a lot of weird happenings that night or around that time period, a lot of break-ins and things. And here's a graphic that I made for my book that I'll add here for everybody, where it shows all these things happening along this area here. Okay, so here we go. So if you can see this, what I've got here is, so aerial is going to be off the screen to the right there, but this is between Woodland and aerial. And so there's this Casey's burglary. It was a burglary there at Casey's Corner Store. Yeah, east of Woodland at 11 p.m. the night of the hijacking. And the person stole cigarettes, cigars, Polaroid film, and work gloves. Okay. And what's interesting about that is that where the guy was found where the guy was spotted walking on the road around that same time was about a half a mile away from there. Okay. So I would say that guy has more to do with that burglary maybe than being Cooper. That's just my hunch. If there was a guy just walking around, some drifter or whatever. But what's interesting is if you look there too, where that pin is, there's also a boat that was stolen, perhaps the night of the hijacking. We're not sure. There was also a break-in of a cabin on Gristmill Road, which is where the body of the girl was found, Barbara Derry, the next year. But canned goods were taken. But in my research, I found that all these burglaries, they think, came from a drug den, essentially, because there was in the Woodland paper, or I think it's a Longview paper, actually, Longview Daily News. The next week, there was a big bust where they busted these hippies, I guess, who were basically breaking in places, and they found a bunch of things from break-ins in Kelso is where they found these people. So now, what's remarkable about that, Bruce, if you what maybe raised your spidey sense, and it raised mine a little bit the first time I read that about the Casey's store break-in, is what was taken at the Hockinson store: cigarettes, jerky, gloves, like nothing important. And we had the same night a break-in at Casey's store, and it's cigarettes, cigars, gloves, and Polaroid film for some reason, which apparently Polaroid film was expensive back then. I wasn't around back then, so maybe that is something you steal. But so I think that guy is more likely to be associated with that than Cooper, just because of the location. But there's not a Bill, I know you put. Yeah, he's saying he puts Cooper landing north of Merwin Lake, but you're not.
Well, yeah, that's Bill's scenario. Like, Bill, I got to ask you, if Cooper is landing at Merwin Dam, why isn't he getting into his Alumacraft that he moored there for his getaway? What's he walking down the road for?
Well, and again, it's been debunked. Also, the lights of Merwin Dam, that whole thing has been. It's so weird. That came from the In Search of episode, right? That's in the In Search of episode. It's talking about the lights at Merwin Dam, were lit up that night like a Christmas tree, and they could give Cooper a beacon. Well, I talked to Jim McClellan, who was the pilot of the small aircraft that the Rackstraw Griff liked to say was Rackstraw's, wingman or whatever. But that was actually Jim McClellan's plane. He has the airstrip right there at ground zero of the FBI's drop zone, the McClellan airstrip. And McClellan was flying around back then a lot. And he says, no way. He goes, you couldn't even see Merwin. You couldn't see the dam at Merwin in clear conditions because there was no lights there. Certainly not.
I'm thinking the dam is maybe a half mile away from Ariel Tavern, where we're all drinking, on the Cooper Day, right?
Sure.
And you would think that if it was lit up like a torch, like a Roman candle, you think the whole sky would be lit up,
No.
No.
Yeah, there's no.
We're drinking in the dark in the middle of the street. Come on.
Yeah, there's a photo. Yeah, here's a photo. I'll show people this photo. And this is a photo of Lake Merwin, of the lights at Lake Merwin, just so people can understand that there's this. You're not seeing this from 10,000 feet through triple cloud cover, folks, at all. Let me pull this up.
While you're doing that, I just want to give a shout out to Bill because his whole scenario, I don't think it's true, but it's elegant.
It does. It works.
And it really shows the finesse and precision of one's imagination, despite all the winds of the vortex. There's real beauty to Bill.
No, I enjoyed meeting Bill last year. He's an interesting guy, Bill. There you are.
Sure, yeah. Okay,
so there's Lake Merwin lights. You're not seeing that from 10,000 feet through triple cloud cover.
Yeah, no, it's
But I think I don't know where that came from in that In Search of episode, but it is interesting. It's funny that there's so many vortexy things that night of the hijacking, a fisherman was not what fell over. An older guy fell out of his canoe or whatever fishing, and he didn't come back home. And they reported him missing at 8:13 that night in Lake Merwin. It's like, okay, but he was found earlier the next morning. Didn't die though. He was almost had hypothermia, but they found him. But there may have been searchlights brought out later on, but he wasn't reported missing until 8:13. So there's no lights going on. But I'm not sure what Cooper could see or not. Let's see. Yeah, it says Zodi77 says, this is the quote from the In Search of, when Cooper, I can't do Leonard Nimoy's voice, but when Cooper jumped, the dam was crowned with a series of brilliant lights. Well, no, it wasn't. I don't know where that came from. Okay, Nikki says there was also a wedding party at the golf course adjacent to Casey's Corner Store. Nikki, was that?
Oh, Nikki, where did you pull that up from? Oh my God.
Well, I guess because Nikki looked into that because if you remember, that's also mentioned, I think, in the In Search of episode that there was a wedding like that night or something in Ariel or in that area in Woodland or La Center. I think it was La Center maybe. But yeah, there's that. So, okay, let's see. More questions. All right. Okay. Somebody said, there's a good one earlier on. Let me get back to it. Give me a second. Oh my God. I've missed a lot of questions here. So let's go. We talked about that. Okay. Apart from the lack of a body, what is the biggest piece of circumstantial evidence that Dan Cooper survived the jump? Well, I would say the money, because I don't know how the money, because if he dies, then how does the money? I mean, because he's not landing in the river. Because I don't think he jumped that late. I don't think he could have jumped that lake. I don't think he's jumping over the river to begin with. But so he says, what is the biggest circumstantial evidence that Cooper survived the jump? I would say the money. Bruce, what would you say is the biggest piece of evidence that Cooper survived the jump?
Nope. No body.
Yeah.
Money.
The money. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah, there wouldn't be a body. Look, as I've said a million times, they found the body of a kid during one of the searches who had been dead for about a year. He had gone hunting, and all they ever found of him was like a femur and his rifle or something. They torn asunder by animals. Go walking in the woods. How many carcasses do you see of animals? You don't, right? Because they get, animals eat other animals and humans are animals and they get eaten too. So, but his parachute though would still be around. The money would have, if he no pulled, the money's coming down with him probably. So he's, going down the money. I don't know. I do like the theories about, kind of the off the wall theories about Cooper being double crossed by his ground guy and being killed. I'll take the money now. Thank you very much. Thank you, useful idiot, for doing this for me. I'll kill you now and take the money. Who knows? That's some woo-woo there. Okay, let's see. Did anyone search the Bahamas for a Cooper 20? No. Okay.
Bahamas.
Will you be working on There Is a Treasure Inside? What is this? Bruce, do you know about that?
No.
Nikki says, will you be working on There Is a Treasure Inside? I have no idea what that means, Nikki.
That sounds like the Finn guy, that treasure hunt.
Well, there's another treasure hunt that Eric jumped into recently and didn't go well. I think.
Please. Really?
Something called The Secret, I guess. I don't know what that is.
Well, speaking of Eric, how's his money? Has he paid off the?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah.
He gets to keep the money that. He already sold 50 something tickets to CooperCon, and that's his money, so he gets that. He gets to keep that too. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So just for those wondering, we've added CooperCon. Drew Beeson's coming to talk about Ted Braden.
Okay.
So he's coming for the first time ever to CooperCon. Limbach is going to talk about Skip Hall. Let's see. The one that I'm really looking forward to is Colleen Fitzpatrick is coming. She is the founder of the Doe Project. She has solved untold number of FBI cold cases through DNA. She also solved the Somerton Man mystery. For those who know about the Somerton Man, who was found dead in Australia, I guess. She did something that solved that. So she's actually solved these things. And some good news she told us, as she is like one of the leading experts on DNA in the world, actually, and she's coming to give us talk about it, is that Tom felt that if the hair slide is ever found, that the glue that they used to smush it down into the slide would have destroyed the DNA. And Colleen said, no way, not today, not in today's technology. She goes, if we had Cooper's hair, we would have his profile minutes. So that's the thing to be found, is the hair slide, because that thing still exists, I assume. Don't know where it is. There was a time there where I thought it was actually in the Jackson, Mississippi FBI office here in Jackson, where I live. And I almost jumped in my car and drove down there to start beating, because I know some of those guys down there, and I was going to be like, hey, we looked for it. But that slide is in, the FBI have a lost and found. So there actually are, I forget what they're called, like they're called like 1A folders or so whatever. They have like lost and founds. And Tom tells a story about that, right? That they found a stack of, like, the Cooper cash was like left in a safe somewhere in some small FBI office for a couple of years. And when they found it, they're like, oh yeah, this is the Cooper money. So that was always the infuriating thing about what they would do is, so for those who don't know, they have Cooper's hair or somebody's hair from the back headrest. There was a thing called hair microscopy. I want to say that microscopy, where they can compare the hairs of for example, if they found the hair of somebody on the body of a victim who was killed, right? They could analyze that hair against the hair of a suspect, right? And that's what they did with Cooper. Is they oftentimes suspects, Richard McCoy's hair was looked at, Orville Lyon's hair was looked at. They would compare the Cooper hair to a suspect hair to see if they were the same. But what they would do is, whenever this occurred, Seattle, who held the Cooper hair, would put it in the mail, and they'd mail it to the FBI headquarters in DC, just like FedEx it. So poor Cooper's hair is going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And one time, the crime lab sent Cooper's hair to LA for some reason. So there's this memo in the FBI files where LA goes, hey, Seattle, I think we have DB Cooper's hair. You might want this back. And they go, yes, give it back now. And so they send it back. But somehow Cooper's hair ended up in LA. So that just seems a very perilous thing to do with evidence like that.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding, though, from talking to Larry, though, they don't do that anymore. Any scientific evidence like that is always stored at Quantico. Like it's just, they don't trust the field agents to manage it for good reason, apparently.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Yeah. So, because it was never lost. Okay, let's see. Somebody's asking. Lisa says, "Where does Bruce know where Snowman lives?"
He lives in California, up in the hills. He's up in the mountains.
Okay, and he's still alive, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking one of the guys when you were talking about the old days of the drop zone, people talking to Larry. Safe Cracking PLF was one of the guys back then too. That's Tim Collins, who's the Dwayne Weber guy. Joe's Mystery Man, who I've said it a million times, Pope. People, if you ever listen to any Vortex episode, after you listen to me and Bruce's episodes, go listen to the Tim Collins, Dwayne Weber episodes. They'll make you think twice about Dwayne Weber, even though I don't buy Dwayne as Cooper. But Tim is such an eloquent speaker and weaves such a good story that you go, well. And what's interesting is if Dwayne had any aviation background, I would actually look into him more, despite his ears being so out there. I mean, he had like bozo. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
But Himmelsbach liked Dwayne because Himmelsbach liked the idea of a con making one last effort, right? Yeah. And so I like that.
I'm more fascinated with Joe as an element of in her own right, and to this day, I've never been dissuaded that Joe has relationships that are unknown, that were unknown when she was alive.
Yeah,
and I believe that she was somebody's eyes and ears keeping tabs on us. And she was being fed information and contact in the same way that Snowman gave me innumerable assistance with names and numbers and addresses and phone numbers and helped really coach me through talking to a lot of people. Somebody was doing the same thing for Joe Weber.
Yeah, my take is that because I know that she harassed Larry, from Larry telling me that, and Larry had nothing to do with it.
Harassed everybody.
Yeah. My thinking, though, I get the sense that Curtis Ing could be malleable at times. I think you look at Marla, perhaps.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
But Joe's activity and her knowledge, her insider knowledge, predates Larry and
Curtis. Yeah.
Yeah, Curtis. The fact that when I talked to I went to Tina's sister, Jane Lee Dormith, the FBI agent in Shelton, Washington. And I introduced myself and told him who I was. He said, "Oh, you're the guy that Joe Weber was talking to my wife about the night before." And, quote, was camped out on the phone all night with her.
This is Tina's brother-in-law, right?
This is Tina's brother-in-law is telling me that his wife, who didn't want to talk to me, all right, and was warned that I was coming and got warned by Joe Weber. Now, how did Joe Weber get that phone number and have a relationship with Jane Mucklow to the degree that they're on the phone all night long? That's one element. The same thing when I called Billy Waugh, Sergeant Billy Waugh, introduced myself. And I got Billy Waugh's phone number from Snowman. All right. And I'm calling. I'm calling. And Billy was a great guy. I mean, he picks up on the first ring. He's, I just introduced. Yeah, you want to talk about Braden? Sure. Yeah, man, that guy had gonads the size of watermelons. Yeah. And he said, "I sure hope you're not like that crazy woman, Joe Weber." I said, when did you talk to Joe Weber? Oh, a while ago.
Why would Joe ever talk to Billy Waugh?
Yeah, why? How did Joe get his phone number?
Well, and Dwayne's not special forces, so what would be the purpose of that? That's bizarre.
Braden, she's digging into the whole SOG thing.
But why? I mean, she's pushing Dwayne. I don't.
Bingo. that proves my argument that she was working for somebody to get information, that she wasn't just pushing hubby as DB Cooper. She was an investigator in her own right.
It's interesting.
With her own agenda that is still unknown to this day.
Well, so Pat Boland and Mary Johns from New Zealand are both asking that they literally had a jinx on this. They both wanted to ask you if maybe Joe Weber is the Clara of the Gunther saga. I mean, how far back does she go in the Cooper world? I mean, she says that Dwayne got her into it, right? But do we really believe that?
Well, Clara goes back to the 80s. 82.
Yep.
That's
82.
Yep. Right. Okay. Maybe Joe. Joe got active in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And was pushing. By then, she was already pushing Dwayne as DB Cooper, and is harassing people in the FBI. And they asked her for DNA samples, for hair samples and combs. And
this is going to be Agent Ralph Hope at that time.
Was it Hope?
Yeah.
Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that.
Yep.
And and that's and Joe left her mark.
Yeah.
in Seattle from that point on. If anything, Pat Boland is the modern day Joe Weber in some regard.
No.
In her tenaciousness.
Yeah.
Thank God she doesn't talk my ear off when I would tell Joe, I'd give her, Joe, I'm giving you 5 minutes. That's all I can spare tonight. But she would talk your ear off. And I'd say after 5 minutes, I said, Joe, I gotta go.
Yeah. She
and she said, you always tell me that. I go, I do.
It's a shame that she's not around and in good health, because I mean, she would be an interesting character. She would come.
She would come to and she'd hold her own on stage at the conference. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, she was tenacious with a capital T, as Ross Perot used to say.
Yeah.
But
make sure she gets someone to drive her, because she's the world's worst driver. I almost got killed with her.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. Oh God.
She was terrifying.
More than that, she was downright dangerous.
Let's see. They're asking you, do you have a favorite suspect?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
I know.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, I guess.
Yeah.
There's lots of.
And to add to that, when we find out, I think we're going to find out who DB Cooper is one of these days.
Yeah. Somebody asked that too.
Yeah, and when we do, we're going to go, who the hell's that?
Yeah, I say this damn near every episode, but when I became friendly with McNally, and started talking to him, if he did not have an accomplice, he might have gotten away with it, honestly. I mean, he made it back to his house for a week. In his hijacking is a million times more interesting than Cooper's, like just night and day. It's so many weird things happen in his. I mean, my God, I mean, the sheriff of the county where he jumped gave him a ride into town.
Right. A helicopter was right over him with a searchlight.
Yeah, and missed him. I mean, he's in the same hotel for 3 days with all the FBI guys who are looking for him. I mean, it's just shocking. Anyway, but Mac, though, when I started hanging out, talking to Mac, I was thinking, you could live a million lifetimes researching the Robert Wilson, which was his alias. You could research if it was the mystery of Robert Wilson. You could spend a million lifetimes researching Robert Wilson, and you would never come across Martin McNally, unemployed gas station worker from Wyandotte, Michigan, right? Never. And that should scare the hell out of everybody, because it's probably that way with Cooper. It just would never just be some random guy. But now you, though, your hunch, though, you believe it was a special forces SOG person.
That's where I lean. That's where I lean
towards
is somebody that was a commando, somebody like Ted Braden.
Yeah.
Somebody that knew what the hell he was doing. He had command presence on the plane.
Confident.
Yeah, he's competent. Didn't break a sweat. He was doing his job. It was another day in the office.
And that's the weird thing is about even the guys who were badasses. McCoy was very much a super soldier in a way. Very much. He wanted to go for a third tour, and his wife said, "I'll divorce you if you do." So I mean,
he rescued ARVN soldiers, and
yes.
not many helicopters
by himself.
Yeah.
No co-pilot. Just got in a plane, got in a chopper, and flew off. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, McCoy is a tragedy, really. But
interesting guy. Interesting.
Yeah, he was. But he was sweating his makeup off. He was very uncomfortable putting people in that position. I think he was a good person. Yeah. Whereas Cooper didn't break a sweat. Despite wearing
a Mormon Sunday school teacher, so yeah, he's good. When he's going to threaten to play little people with a hand grenade, he's going to.
Yeah, right. We know that thing. Did you watch that video I sent? Did you watch that video I made recently about those bombs going off in '72? About the I believe I sent you the video about the guy who in March of '72 he put bombs on four TWA planes, live bombs, and wanted $2 million for the locations of these bombs, whatever. And one bomb was found by some dogs at Kennedy Airport 12 minutes before it was set to go off. It was a live bomb set to go off. One of the bombs did go off in Las Vegas at 7 a.m. the next morning. The two bombs that were, he was going to set bombs off at 6-hour intervals. He had timed these things, and they were real bombs. So this guy was a son of a bitch. I mean, he put active bombs on planes for money. But I wonder if people watched till the end of my video, because I showed the sketch of this guy. Okay, this thing no one knows about this. I mean, you don't even know about this thing. It was this big thing, but it's still an active case because they never found the guy. It's unsolved. And his sketch looks like freaking D.B. Cooper, right? I mean, here, I'll show everybody the sketch. This is the sketch of the guy who planted these friggin' bombs in TWA airplanes in March of '72, wanting $2 million. Here he is.
Did he get his money?
No. But look at that. I mean, very Cooperish, wouldn't you say?
Very Cooperish.
Very Cooperish. And I'm going, oh my God. He even has the lower lip that's kind of heavy, the little skinny weird nose, the wraparound sunglasses, wearing a pilot's uniform because the bombs were planted in cockpits in these long briefcases that pilots carry maps in. So they were planted in cockpits, and the pilots would have thought they were just the regular map suitcases.
Yeah, map suit. Yeah.
You have to watch that, but it's interesting. So, okay, let's see. Lisa, you keep asking. Yes, McCoy won the Distinguished Flying Cross. He did for rescuing those ARVN people. Somebody says, who would pick BTK to be Dennis Rader? Nobody. So maybe Cooper is somebody we would never expect. Possibly, but I guess. Let's see. Yeah, I've never asked you this. Do you think that Cooper was inspired by Paulsini 13 days earlier?
No.
You think it was two separate ideas at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but maybe do you think that Cini escalated Cooper because he's going, well, they might adapt now that somebody else is doing it. Maybe I should do it. Because 13 days later is pretty close.
I'm in that Ted Braden world, the commando world, that this was well planned. This wasn't just
the bar napkin.
Yeah, this was not an individual who said, "Oh, I'm going to make some money tonight." That it probably had strong political ties, some kind of semi-sanctioned rogue, nod, wink, wink kind of thing. That who Cooper is, if anything, Cooper may have been terminated with extreme prejudice afterwards. As elements in the government are saying we got to take care of some loose strings here in this caper. But I if I had to make a bet, I would say Cooper was a commando, and it was done on the government's nickel, and that there was an extraction team. And how the money ended up at Tina Bar, was the extraction team bury it there? There are elements here that don't comport with each other. But I'm just telling you what resonates with me. and kind of feels good, feels right.
I'll ask you the Darren Schaefer question. If you could know who Cooper was or know how it was done, totally how it was done, which one would you choose?
I want to know everything. Tell me.
Yeah, I know, but that's not the question. It's like you get to know who he was, and you can go research that guy, or you get to know everything about how it went down without knowing the guy's name.
What? This is an either or? That's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I want to know everything.
Okay, fair enough.
So if I only I'll pick one and I'll work from there.
Okay. This guy, Jay, says, Bruce has often said in interviews that Cooper was wearing loafers, yet Ryan, you strongly say no, and that he may have had little boots on. Well, I mean, loafers only comes about. I actually found where that started. That was so there was an AP article written in 1981, the AP article that commemorated the 10th anniversary. That's where we get a lot of things. We get Cooper ordering 2 drinks came from there. That's the first time you ever see that. Loafers comes from that. First time you'll see loafers, and I did search connections for words. I searched DB Cooper loafers. First time was 81. Tina says he was wearing non-tie type shoes that went ankle high. So my little guy here,
an ankle boot or something. Yeah.
Yeah, my little guy has these ankle boots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brown ankle boots, by the way.
Yeah. Now to the listeners out there, you have to remember who I am and who Ryan is, right? I'm old school. Most of my information is crapola. Okay. Yeah. I'm picking up from FBI narratives. All my books were written pretty much before any 302s were released. Only the last edition had some influence from 302s. And I make no bones about it. My eyeballs crapped out on me after reading about 50 F302s. So that's where I drew the line. And if it wasn't for Ryan and Skyjack and the other guys whose eyes are stronger than mine and were feeding me information, and I tried to integrate it all in. So a lot of what I was writing is now understood to be wrong.
Well,
or at least incomplete or inaccurate or not quite, it's not our latest understanding. Hence, Ryan's book, when he gets his act together and actually publishes it, which it should be tomorrow, the end of the week, Monday at the latest. Come on, kid, get going. All right.
I finished it today.
Right. Let's not be dicking around anymore. Get your friggin' book out.
I know.
Let's go. Come on.
But yeah, I've heard people, the comparison, because I think you and I have the only 2 comprehensive Cooper books about everything out there.
Pretty much,
and
I would say so. Yeah.
Somebody said that basically yours is BC and mine is AD. They're kind of different things. Yeah, right. And they both have value.
Dinosaur, modern man.
Well, speaking of dinosaurs, what's your favorite dinosaur?
I'm scared of dinosaurs.
You don't like thinking about them?
No. I have yet to see Jurassic Park.
Really?
No.
Wow.
They terrify me. Absolutely terrify me. No, thank you.
No, don't like dinosaurs. That's interesting. Pat Boland says, hey, Bruce, was Cooper connected to Air America at all?
Probably. I'm waiting for you, Pat, to tell us the truth of it. You're going to be at CooperCon. You're going to get that pilot. You're going to get some Air America guys there. Come on, let's.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. So those wondering, Pat Bowen will be speaking about Air America there, and she's actually going to have an Air America kicker with us. He's going to come. A guy named Lee Gossett, which is also a Vortex thing there. Gossett, no relation, but he'll be there.
To Wolfie?
No relation. I just said there's no relation to Wolfie, but it's the same last name.
All right. And you got to get Galen Cook to come down.
Yeah, I don't have his email. You have to give me his email. I'll email him. I've never spoken to him. I'd like to.
Maybe not this year, but down the road.
Yeah, we have short notice this year. Although we do have a parachute. I'm excited about our parachute panel. So we're having a parachute panel with Mark Meltzer, of course, who is our skydiver extraordinaire, but also newcomer to the Vortex, Mike Davis, who was paratrooper of the year 2 years ago for the 82nd Airborne, and also on the panel is going to be Gossett, who is a smoke jumper. So we're going to have a skydiver, a smoke jumper, and a paratrooper.
Yeah, Mike is active duty, by the way.
He is selective. Yes, he has to get permission to go do these things.
Yeah.
So he received his permissions. He's coming. But those are the three. Well, there's also the WUFO category. So, but basically, Cooper was a paratrooper, a skydiver, a smoke jumper, or was a WUFO of some sort. So let's see.
And Snowman is the guy who put that all together. He's the first one to put that on the table.
Snowman.
Snowman.
What the
smoke jumping, SOG. He led the parade on all of that back around 2009, 2010.
And and for those who don't know, there is an Air America document that says that when they did their kicking for their supplies over, I guess, Laos or wherever, that the 727s were flying with 15-degree flaps and gear down. That's a bullseye. So, there's that. Yeah. I tend to think there probably is an Air America connection. That seems almost preposterous to think that he would give them the same exact, qualifications.
Yeah, it's uncanny. There's some relationship there.
Yeah, there's something there. He may have known somebody who was. Right. There's something there.
Yeah, or SOG isn't telling us the whole truth, and that they were flying with Air America too. That they did.
Yeah.
That Air America provided the transport for them, because there are rumors. There's rumors. I keep hearing them, but I can't confirm any of them. That the SOG guys did all of their insertions with helicopters.
That's right.
And the rumors is that 727s from Air America and Southern Air Transport were being used to drop in teams that needed a quicker insert, going at jet speeds until you get to the drop zone. Then you slow down to 180 or whatever, drop the stairs and everything and all of that. And you're dropping commandos at the back, good sized teams of American troopers. As opposed to the SOG teams, which were very mixed. I think they were solid. Certainly, all the SOG guys I talked to loved the indigenous guys.
The Yarbers,
the Montagnards. They call them the Yards. And then the Hungs. I think there was another indigenous. One is up in the mountains. Those were the Montagnards. And that was French. That's a French term. And then the Hungs, I think, were down the Mekong Delta, and they were Chinese-ish. Yeah, right. And hated the Viet Cong.
Well, yeah,
which is why they joined up with the Americans.
I think the SOGs would have 3 Americans and then like 9.
Something like that. Yeah, they grew up. It was 3. They always had 3.
Yeah.
Americans, and then it was 2 or 3, 4, and then it grew to 9-ish, and something like that.
And it was Braden's idea, actually, a smart idea of Staff Sergeant Braden. It was his idea to dress like the Viet Cong because it would give them that. It would basically give them that maybe
give you
5 seconds they needed.
Yeah.
Of confusion.
Yep.
To blast them, because all you need is 5 seconds to get a jump on somebody. Yeah. And that was smart. Braden. Like I said, I don't know why there's not a movie about Ted Braden. He's the most interesting person, I think. Although Skip Hall's giving him a run for his money lately. As far as
we got some good movies coming. Come on. Yeah. Plus, we need a straightforward documentary about the D.B. Cooper case. Just a plain old fashioned, straightforward.
It's not influenced by Colbert or somebody. Yeah. I believe in one of my review videos, I think there's that Netflix documentary. I think that like Ragstraw takes up half of it. And it's like, we just did Ragstraw in 2016 with the case closed garbage. It's like,
come on.
Tired of Ragstraw. Ted Braden's not been featured on anything. I think Skip Hall would be good on a show.
Yeah. That's where my curiosity is, because whether Skip Hall
again
Cooper or not, he was involved in all of that crapola in the 60s, and the plumbers and the
plumbers, and
JFK and the grassy knoll and all
the E. Howard Hunt stuff. That's
yeah. You going to get Dave Umberger to come talk about?
I'd like. Maybe next year. I guess.
Come on, get him down here. Come on.
I'd like Dave to come on my show. Dave, I think, is the only other guy who can hang with me on like sketches. He knows a lot about sketches.
I'll tell you what. When my inheritance comes in, I should be getting my inheritance, a nice little check in October. All right.
Good.
I went to the attorney today to see about getting the whole thing going here.
Yeah.
Let's get this party started. You know. And
just on the road.
I will send David an airplane ticket.
I'd love to. I mean, Dave should come for sure.
He should, but he doesn't have the money, you know, and he's taking care of his pops, you know. So.
Oh, is that what's going on? Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. All right. People are saying. All right. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, it's a nice thing. Does Bruce realize just how many Cooper fans have been influenced by his book? Are you aware of the influence of your book, Bruce?
Dimly.
Yeah, I know. You're being humble there.
And I love it. I appreciate it. You know, it's like.
Well, like you said, though, it's interesting. Your book is almost like a compilation of a lot of your articles that you wrote.
That's what it all comes from. And because I started with Barb Dayton at an air show writing for a newspaper. I was writing about the air show and met the foremans who told me about Barb Dayton. And that triggered my curiosity. I knew who D.B. Cooper was, but the foremans had written a book about Barb and gave me all of their contact information at the FBI. That's when I got Larry's email address and I got his phone number and I got to know who Ralph Hope was and all of the other players. And so within one afternoon, I had a welcome to the Vortex. You know, it was
because of the
foreman, in 3 or 4 hours talking to Ron Foreman. And for those of us who know and love Ron Foreman, we know that once he gets started talking, he doesn't shut up for about 4 minutes.
It's such a good guy, though.
This show has been going on for over 2.5 hours.
That's what we do.
You know, so and I'm hungry. You know,
yeah, we'll get off. Yeah.
You know, so it's 7:00 my time. I got, what is it, midnight in Mississippi? Whatever.
No, it's 9:00 here.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up here. But anyway, so we're going to basically. We will. I want everybody to come to CooperCon. It's going to be a great CooperCon this year. It's going to be different. I mean, but we've got the DNA lady, Colin Fitzpatrick's coming. We're talking about Skip Hall, talking about Air America. We got kickers, and the museum people. The museum is like a $25 ticket. It's included in the cost. Plus,
I love the museum. The museum
it's amazing.
It's an amazing, beautiful, stylish, sophisticated, elegant museum.
Yes, and the ticket, I mean, your museum ticket is included in the cost, okay? So that's great. Yeah. And the second thing is that we are trying, they said they're going to move heaven and earth to make it happen. We've asked them to open up the 727-100 that they have there, which is the exact plane that Cooper jumped out of. There's the Cooper statue in front of it. There's a Cooper statue in front of it, people. I mean, that's why we couldn't lose the museum, you know, from some shenanigans. We had to keep it because there's a Cooper statue at our place.
The 727 says American Airlines on it, but hey, you know.
Yeah, it's a different company, but it's the same plane. But the point is that people should go on it and see how close everything is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I told people recently that I looked at a blueprint of a 727-100, and I actually texted Bill Mitchell. I said, "Did you know that I looked at a blueprint that your right elbow was 5 feet exactly from Cooper's left elbow?" And I tell people, go get a tape measure and hold out 5 feet. That's how close Bill was to Cooper for hours. That is really close.
It's like walking up the staircase. I've flown on a 727 as a kid, and when I was in college, something like that. Walking up the staircases, it's tiny. It's like walking up into somebody's attic or something on a rickety old, you know. Yeah.
Yes, and Mary, there will be online streaming. Don't worry about that. It's going to happen. Yes, Nikki points out Tom K's big tie particle reveal because they've got. Macron, with their new technology, has scanned the tie with Superman vision, I guess, and we've got new tie particle stuff that might help us out if you're so inclined toward that. And
Tom always delivers. I'm astonished.
He's always got something, doesn't he?
And good stuff. I can listen to that guy all day long.
Yeah. Vexing. He always vexes. He always throws the wrench and everything. And this is a guy who's, you know, he's in Peru, or was in Peru at Machu Picchu recently, and now he's doing Cooper stuff. He's like an international man of science. I love it. Doing dinosaurs and stuff. So
yeah, last year he was in Mongolia looking for T-Rex or something.
Yeah, that's what he does. Yeah, he's the man. Let's see. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. So anyway, all right, Bruce. Well, I will let you go, and I will let everybody else go. Yes. And we will.
Enough Cooper for one day. Come on, guy.
Yeah, I got you. All right. Well, I will talk to y'all again soon, folks. Good night.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.